There is this question in the movie of who is Major, and you actually do answer it here. Can you talk a little bit about how you decided how to approach that? Was there ever a thought to not include that in the movie, or did you always want to present this other figure who she used to be?
It was very much part of the original manga. Was the who, you know, where did what interested me was where did the brain come from? It was a kind of Victorian body snatcher kind of theme and idea, and I felt to translate or adapt the anime as is would be very hard because it's pretty out there. It works in anime. You get away with a lot more kind of narratively, but if you had to transpose that film, people would just be like, what the hell's going on? So I had to find a kind of, I guess, a more noirish story. You know, it's a bit more like Angel Heart or Chinatown. You know, you got this kind of strange detective story, and as she gets closer to uncovering who the villain is, she gets closer to uncovering who she is.
And there is like a certain added layer of villainy to that too, when you find out she was this young girl and they, you know, changed everything about how she looks and everything. So can you talk about sort of that translation and what you hope people take away from that?
Again, I think I hope different people take away different things from it. You know, it's an element of the film that was made it quite Manchurian Candidate, and I think made it a bit more relevant. And I like the idea that there's a kind of refugee story in there. There's definitely political undertones, but it wasn't like, you know, this is a film about this or this is a film about that. Ultimately, it's an action movie, but I hope has weight to it. I find too many action films or films in this genre, you go in, the visual effects are staggering, but you just don't really connect to it somehow. And when you leave, you're like, yeah, but you don't talk about it, or nothing stays with you. And the cinema that I love is stuff that stays with me still, images and themes and ideas in those films that really impacted me, I still think about, and I hope this does that.
So if I was to isolate two themes of this movie, I think they're identity and consent, and that's sort of the conversation the film has. So I'm curious, what's your take on how the ideas of identity and consent relate to the end of the movie when we find out about Major's origin story and who she was before?
Well, I think, you know, there's an interesting parallel between the Major's experience in the beginning of the film and then, you know, what is actually happening to her character. You know, she asks herself, you know, who am I if I don't remember my past? If my body doesn't belong to me, then who does my brain belong to, or who am I? Of course, we assume a big part of her experience as I guess a property of somebody else is, you know, that she has some relief in knowing like that she has to give her own consent to have, you know, any changes made or have her mind reviewed and so forth. And then when that's taken away from her, just the reality of that, it's so profound, you know, there's such a parallel there between what she's experiencing as a character, wondering, you know, who am I, and like, if I'm not a product of my past, then how do I own this life that I'm in? And then actually realizing that she doesn't even own the body that she's in. It's just really complex. I mean, it's just a lot to think about. It's exhausting. It's really exhausting, but it's a lot of food for thought, I think. That's what makes this film really unique, is that, you know, it's a character-driven film in this genre, and it's rare. It's rare to be able to have those two things together.
Everything they told you was a lie.
Who are you?
They did not save your life. They stole it.